Hey guys, so I want to make a new video going over the brand new legacy event in Path of Exile 1. So if you don't know what this is, it's an event for 1 month that has 19 brand new Ascendancies. They're replacing all the old Ascendancies, and it's also going to be a new endgame atlas essentially, transformed into an idol system. So I want to go over everything about the event, and at the end of the video, I also want to go over some of the Ascendancies, some of the really strong ones I think will be really good. And if you're wondering, yes, I will have my build guides as well for this event, bows and lightning strike if you're wondering. But yeah, the event looks really fun. It's happening next week, February 20th, which is a Thursday, at 12 p.m. PST. I'll link this down below so you can see your own time and your local time. But yeah, let's go over everything about this event first. 19 brand new Ascendancies and an alternate endgame. So there's this MTX right here, which you get the full set at level 80. And it's also usable in Path of Exile 2 as well, which is nice. Also Twitch drops, which is like some cloaks, kind of whatever, but they will last for a week as well. And then a quick FAQ just saying where it's going to be. It's on both PC and console. You need to make a new character like a regular league, although this is not a new league. It is pretty much close to it. There's a lot of content in here. You can of course change your ascendancy, and Necrocell's event is going to end when this event begins. So that's pretty about it for the FAQ and what's actually going to happen in this event. Now I want to go over some of the really cool things this event is actually bringing. So the endgame Atlas tree, as we know it, is being replaced with this temporary system of idols. So essentially you get this little sanctum relic locker right here. You put idols into here and they are permanent passive bonuses to the Atlas. So you can see some idols down here, and what GG has said themselves is that essentially you can spec into a single mechanic quite heavily with this, making it 2 to 3 times more potent than what it is usually, which is good because if you're taking away the Atlas, it's a lot of juice loss, right? So these idols have to be extremely good to make up for that fact. I am quite excited for this. It will change up the endgame meta, which is, very nice. We haven't had a change in endgame meta in like a year now because Silos has been around for so long. So having like this essentially brand new endgame is quite exciting. I am looking forward to this, especially some really cool new farming strats. So you have normal idols, you have unique idols. Essentially, unique idols are the keystones from the old Atlas tree. So in this example, it's crop rotation. And these idols come in different sizes. So there's 2x2s, there's 1x2s, there's 1x1s, and there's also 3x1s. So you have to mix and match, get your best idol set up. You could trade them with other players, and they have a high chance to drop from bosses, and they also drop normally in maps. They did make it sound like idols have a really high chance to drop, so it should be quite plentiful. Also, they mentioned that the map sustain should be fine because some idols will have map implicits to have additional map drop chance. And if you are wondering, the way you unlock all these slots in the new, map device is going to be from completing your favorite slots. So there's going to be no more map objectives. This means you can essentially rush to tier 16 as fast as you can, as strong as your build is, and all you need to do is unlock all your favorite slots. And once you unlock all your favorite slots, that's it, you're done. So you don't need to complete every single map anymore, which is kind of like a nice change of pace. So like I said, there's 19 new Ascendancies, and I want to go over the most appealing Ascendancies, some of the most stronger Ascendancies that's going to be in this event, and also go over what type of builds I'm going to play. So the first one is going to be Whisper. So Whisper is a Ranger Ascendancy, and it's focusing on mana stacking. This Ascendancy is going to be extremely powerful high-end. Hard to say how good it's going to be early on. Early on, I don't think it's going to be that good. But essentially, the most powerful stuff here is getting +1 maximum mana per dexterity. You can get to some insane mana levels with this. Do note that Intelligence does not provide bonus max mana, but Intelligence was 2 Intelligence per 1 max mana, while this is 1 max mana per 1 dexterity. So it's a lot stronger than Intelligence. It also provides probably one of the strongest notes in the game. Increases and reductions to spell damage also apply to attacks at 100% of their value. This is a very strong note, especially when combined with Indigon. Or of course, like I said, it's not going to be like an insane league starter, but definitely with like a mid-game, end-game build, it will be quite high damage. The one thing this Ascendancy is missing though is movement speed. So that is one thing it's going to lack, where you're going to have to make up for it. You get no attack speed and no movement speed on Ascendancy. Of course, Dex stackers though do get really nice attack speed bonuses on their chest, so you can make it up for it there. But like I said, not much of an early game Ascendancy, but it's definitely going to be like a very huge late game powerhouse. Next is Surfcaster. Surfcaster is a Shadow Ascendancy, and it's looking to be very strong and also the fastest Ascendancy in the game. So the notable notes here is change in seasons. All damage taken from hits can chill you. The chill effect on you is reversed. So what does this mean? Essentially, if you're already self-damage, a very common way is spinning right, you can chill yourself for 30%, and that's 30% action speed. Keep in mind, something like Tailwind from Deadeye is only 16% action speed, so this is twice of that value if you have a reliable way to chill yourself. Luckily for some builds, like bow builds, it's extremely easy to self-chill yourself, so this Ascendancy is going to be quite strong and by far the fastest Ascendancy out of all of them, especially in the late game. Some other cool stuff here is also the 100% land damage compared to cold damage. This is extremely strong by itself. It also allows your cold damage to shock. You do some really high damage heat shiver builds with this. You can do like a triple convert with like Cold to Fire as well. And unlike Path of Exile 2, Path of Exile 1 convert is very, very strong because you can multiply all the damages going through each new convert. They also have an extremely strong defensive note in Glacial Wave here. Enemies shielded by your hits have the damage dealt by half of the chill effect, so 15% DR. And they also take increased damage based on your chill effect, so 30% increased damage. It should be extremely easy to get max chill and freezes Ascendancy, as long as you're doing like lightning and cold damage, because your lightning damage does get converted to cold damage. You also get Pro-Lift Shock. This can be very, very strong with stuff like Impulsos. This will self-Pro-Lift with Impulsos, so it's essentially an infinite chain as long as it keeps killing enemies. There's also Brine Bound, and this is quite worse than the Warden node. It should be quite good still for stuff like Rogue Exiles, but yeah, the Warden node's a lot better than this, and the Warden node was really, really strong, so this node should be decent at least. You also have Ghost of the Deep, which is one of the strongest level 1 nodes in the entire game. This thing is nuts. You can get this for 2 points right off the bat: move speed, cast speed, attack speed, damage. Essentially everything you want for the campaign you get from this node. The last two notable nodes are the Fishing Rod nodes, where if you're wielding the Fishing Rod, which essentially has no stats, a Fishing Rod can get 40% increased cast speed and it's two-hander, but these are very powerful effects. 50% more cast speed while holding the rod, and all hits are critical strikes while holding the Fishing Rod. Do note this will also affect stuff that you usually can't get crit on, stuff like Heralds, stuff like Impulsas. This is just everything. And also, if you go like to 0% crit chance, you still crit. So you can use stuff like Control Destruction, Morlines without any downside. It's a very strong effect, but unfortunately self-cast in the meta is kind of weak, so I don't know how much is going to be used, because self-cast is not that strong outside of Archmage, and this is really not like a good Archmage Ascendancy. But yeah, overall, very strong for an attack-based build. Not really sure for spells, but we'll see. Next is the Blind Prophet, which is also Shadow. Shadow has some insane Ascendancies, and essentially this Ascendancy is, Lightning Strike, bow builds, any projectile attack build. It's absolutely insane. This has to be the strongest day 1 Ascendancy I've seen in a long time for just generic power. So the first node, which is going to be mandatory, is Sightless. So what Sightless does, your base critical strike chance for weapons becomes 12% and you're blinded. Do note that this blind is actually not a big deal because you can use a minor Pantheon to get rid of this and still keep the upside. So this is really no downside for 12% base crit on your weapon, which is absurd, especially for early on power. And it doesn't stop there. The next insane node is essentially Nimmies. Projectiles have a 50% chance to return to you. Projectiles are fired in random directions. Do note this 50% is per projectile. That's extremely important because if you're firing enough projectiles, you're essentially always going to have one projectile return, meaning you're always going to get a double hit. So in a lot of cases, if you're like 7 to 8 projectiles, this is going to have the exact same effect as Nimmies. So it's just straight up double damage on certain builds, which is obviously insane for just 2 ascendancy points. Really strong for that early on power. Of course, once you eventually get Nimmies and you can swap off of this, right, it's not as insane, but yeah, very, very good. And of course, it also saves that ring slot for not having to use Nimmies in the currency as well. So yeah, very strong ascendancy. And luckily, right after this node, you have Careless, which is this +2 proj. This is the exact same as the Deadeye Ascendancy with the old Ascendancy. So yeah, +2 proj, always good. And extra value here because you're doing random projectiles. And when your characters do random projectiles, you do want the extra projectiles to make sure you're always hidden. These 3 points alone is an insane amount of power, especially for early on. There's some other notable nodes and stuff like Shapeless, which gives you Elusive on crit, and Elusive is moved at 50% effect. This is actually a massive upside because Elusive gets less effective the longer it goes on. So making Elusive go off by 50% means you always have like a high percentage of Elusive. So yeah, and Elusive just gives you a chance to avoid damage and gives you movement speed. It is pretty good. There's also Lightless, which would be really insane for any game of bit stacking. You get 5% increased max life per Abyss Jewel and 5% increased mana per Abyss Jewel. This will stack with the chest. The chest gives you 3% increased max life per Abyss Jewel. So in total, you get 8% increased max life per Abyss Jewel if you're going to be Abyss stacking with the chest, which is a lot of percent increased max life. So yeah, this would be a really insane endgame angle to Ascendancy as well. We just go full Abyss stacking with Adorn probably. The last 2 notable nodes is Restless and Faithless in my opinion. So Restless is just essentially Asenath's Touch. They did mess up the word in here. It is the exact same word of Asenath's. It is currently missing the non-curse aura to inflict are removed from dying enemies. So yeah, it is the full Asenath's effect. They just forgot to include it here, which is essentially just Explodey. If you have a way to automatically curse enemies, it is quite strong for some builds. It is kind of weird though, because you usually don't care for Exploding on attack-based builds like Lightning Strike or LE Hit. So I'm not really sure what it's going to be used on all that much, but I'm sure it will get some use because Explodey is always extremely good. And then of course, the last powerful node is Faithless. Your curse limit is equal to your maximum power charges. This is Anathemas, and it's the same thing as Directionless. Essentially, it just saves you a ring slot. This +1 ring slot is always very, very strong. And of course, it allows you to get this very powerful unique early on. And I think it's a tier 1 unique, so you don't really have it early on. This gives you that option to actually use this, straight away from like essentially tier 1 maps. Yeah, overall, a very strong Ascendancy. It's, what I'm going to be starting as personally. It's extremely strong early on. Definitely one of the best Ascendancies I've seen for especially like day 1 to day 3 period. Next Ascendancy I want to talk about is Architect of Chaos, which is the Templar. So this Ascendancy is pretty cool. I don't think it'll get its full value until you get like the Dagger enchant for infinite like VLS and stuff like that, infinite Val VV. But yeah, essentially it's just a Val Ascendancy focusing on Val skills. So you get some insane like reduced soul game redemption duration and 280% increased crit. You get a 50% increased Val skill effect duration. So stuff like Val BV, Val Spark, and Val skills require 50% reduced souls per use. Once again, I don't think the Ascendancy will have its full power until you get the Dagger enchant from Settlers, because Settlers do give you that infinite, Val soul usage, and then the Ascendancy will really pop off. There are some other potential really powerful builds here that isn't requiring on Val skills. Stuff like mana and ES stacking, because 8% increased max life per corrupted item, or 12% increased max ES per corrupted item. You can have 10 corrupted items on your character, so this is 80% and 120% respectively. Very strong node here. You also have stuff like Hewn Flesh, which makes your skills reserve your life instead of your mana, and also gives you 100% increased life reservation efficiency. You're going to get a ton of auras on your life with this node. So yeah, this is a very strong node as well. So yeah, it's going to be some like life stackers, ES stackers, or just like infinite Val skill usage. Either way, this Ascendancy does look pretty strong, more so in the late game, but yeah. Next Ascendancy is Ancestral Commander. So this is by far the tankiest Ascendancy in the entire game from all the new stuff they showed. And the reason why, you get +3 maximum endurance charges, which is extremely strong for any tank build. Plus the endurance charge is insanely high DR, especially when you're going to stack them. Overall, I did the rough math, but you can get something like 70% elemental and physical damage reduction with a full endurance charge stacking character, which is going to make you so absurdly tanky and make you extremely hard to die. Now, of course, the downside of this, you do need to figure out your damage. This Ascendancy is extremely tanky, like I said, but it's essentially 0 damage. You also get stuff like Defiance of Destiny on Ascendancy node, gain 15% of missing numbers in life before being hit by an enemy, also another very strong tank effect. It also has, select one of these 5 tattoo nodes. Now, if you don't know what these are essentially have a 10% chance to activate on kill, and they all have a minute cooldown. They're all like kind of like mid to like decent effects, but the minute cooldown kind of kills them, so I don't think this is going to see use. It's quite too long. You also get some reduced Warcry speed and Warcry recovery, and then you also get Warcry Explodey. This could be quite useful. 12% is quite a bit, and it's guaranteed to explode the corpse. Then you also get +1 strike, and strike skills target an additional enemy further 50% further away. Now 50% further away will also stack with Scions as well for 90% further away. So your strike range can be essentially a whole screen with this, which could be quite insane for some clear speed. There's also an Ancestral Echo, which is strike skills target the previous location they were used. Keep in mind, this is already in the game and it's on a ring called, I think, Legacy Warriors or something, and it's extremely bad. At first you might read this and be like, wow, this is like double damage. But no, how this works essentially, you have to move a minimum distance for the strike skill to be repeated again, making this pretty much unusable for every skill in the game besides Flicker Strike. So unfortunately, this potentially insane single target node is just bad unless you're a Flicker Strike. Last but not least, you have a really another strong node, Born Under Fire. Nearby enemies convert 50% of fizz damage to fire. Another insane defense here as well, combined with the +3 endurance charges. This is just a tank boy. You're going to be extremely tanky if you play Ascendancy, but you don't really have anything that gives you damage, so you will have to figure that out. Next Ascendancy is Servant of Arcali. This Ascendancy is a really strong mini Ascendancy, but most importantly, I want to point out Malevolent Strands right here. This is also a Shadow Ascendancy, and the reason why this is so strong, you can get this in your first lab, and level 15 Envy gives you 140 flat Chaos damage, which is like 4 times stronger than the same amount of flat that Anger gives you at the same level. So for level 1, this Ascendancy is absolutely nuts. If you're playing Shadow, you can level as the Ascendancy and just one-shot everything up to like Act 7 as soon as you do your first lab. Besides that, the amount of damage this Ascendancy gets is absolutely insane. I've seen minion pops get in day 1 poison cap with like minimal budget gear. Ascendancy is extremely high damage. Might not be the fastest, but like to do like bosses or day 1 Ubers or whatever, this is going to be extremely strong for that. And of course, the last Ascendancy I want to go over real quick. This is just another minion Ascendancy. There's a lot of minion Ascendancies for some reason. I'm not a minion player, but all of them like really strong in their own right. This one, though, there is something different where you can play for DD. So there's gonna be some like zombie DD stuff going on here. There's also gonna be some Baron. You do get Baron on Ascendancy, half your strength edge to your minions, 25% increased strength. There's like a zombie mancer or like a DD minion build. There's also like animate guardian, animate weapon as well. But yeah, either way, that's all the Ascendancies I wanted to go over. All the ones that I think will be the most strongest and powerful in this event. There's some other powerful ones as well, like Aristocrat, which is a dual Ascendancy for stat stacking. But this is something that you really won't have power until way later on, because, you know, stat stacking is not really that much of a good day one build, but it's extremely strong once you have the currency. Another cool one is Paladin, which is extremely strong, like support duo ascendancy. You get a lot of power here if you're playing duo. But yeah, that's mostly about it. Those are the most like neat and like really powerful ascendancies I think there are. I didn't want to go over all 19 because the video would be extremely long. I just want to go over the ascendancies that I thought were, you know, were some of the best and some of the strongest look that you can look forward to and build around. Anyway, that's about it. If you have any questions, leave a comment below. But yeah.